This is a story about a massive legal fight between a homeowner and her HOA. But what's really wild is that the entire thing, all the lawyers, all the money, it all came down to the hidden meaning in just one single sentence. Let's dive in.
Anyone who's ever lived in a community with a homeowners association knows this feeling, right? It's that classic tug of war between your own freedom and the community's rules. And that tension, well, it plays out in neighborhoods all over the place.
But what happens when those rules are, kind of vague, when a sentence can be read in two completely opposite ways? That is the big question we're going to tackle, and we're going to unpack a real-life court case to figure it out. Okay, so our story starts how a lot of these do, with a major disagreement between two sides who see their own rulebook in a totally different light. So let's meet our players. On one side, you've got Marjorie Rodgers, a homeowner, and on the other side, her HOA, Villa Capistrano Ranchos. I mean, this is the classic setup, right? A single resident deciding to take on the entire governing body of her community. So what was this all about? What started this whole legal mess? Well, it all kicked off with what seemed like a really simple and, honestly, a pretty reasonable request about home insurance. See, Marjorie Rodgers took a look at the HOA's group insurance policy and she thought, you know what? I think I can do better. She wanted to go out and get her own insurance for her home, probably thinking she could find a better deal or better coverage. On the surface, it sounds totally straightforward. But the HOA, their answer was a swift and an absolute no. They basically told her she was not allowed to opt out of their group policy. End of story. And that hard no is what set the stage for a major legal showdown. And listen, going up against your HOA, that's not cheap. To even get her case heard by a judge, Marjorie Rodgers had to pay a $550 filing fee. So this wasn't just some casual complaint. She was putting her own money down to challenge them. So the battle lines were drawn, and the whole case shifted away from what felt fair and moved into the community's dense legal documents, the CC&Rs. This wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about language. It was about solving a puzzle hidden deep in the fine print. I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. All the arguments, the legal fees, all that time, it would all boil down to how you interpret one single sentence, a sentence buried in Section 15 of the community's rules. And here it is. This is the sentence that caused all the trouble. Now, at first glance, it kind of looks like it gives homeowners an escape hatch. The HOA shall get insurance, unless, and it's that little word unless where everything just falls apart. The whole fight is right here in this one clause, unless the owners thereof shall have supplied proof of adequate coverage. So what on earth does the owners actually mean? Does it mean a single owner, like Marjorie, or does it mean something else entirely? And there's the problem. This one phrase created two totally different realities. Marjorie Rodgers read, "the owners," and thought, great, that means me, an individual owner, can opt out. But the HOA, they read the exact same words and said, nope, that means all of the owners have to opt out together, as a single group. So who's right? And that question, well, that's what landed this whole mess in front of an administrative law judge. It was now up to the court to be the final interpreter of the rulebook and declare a winner. Okay, before we get to the verdict, you gotta understand the legal standard here. This isn't like a crime show where you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil hearing like this, Marjorie just had to prove that her interpretation was more probably true than not. She just had to tip the scales of justice even just a tiny bit in her favor. In the end, she couldn't do it. The judge ruled in favor of the homeowners association. Marjorie Rodgers lost her case. But honestly, the why she lost is way more important than the fact that she did. The judge's logic is just a masterclass in how to read these documents. The judge's reasoning basically broke down into three simple parts. First, the plural problem. The word owners is plural. The judge said it refers to the owners of all the buildings, not an owner of a building. Second, the language is permissive, not mandatory. It says the board can allow an exception, but it doesn't say they have to. And third, and this is the real kicker, the sentence creates a duty for the HOA, not a right for the homeowner. The HOA's main job here is to insure the property. That exception is for them, not a privilege for the residents. And if you want it straight from the horse's mouth, this quote from the judge's decision just lays it all out. The rule imposes a duty and obligation on the association, but does not confer a right or privilege on an individual owner.
For Marjorie's case, that distinction was basically the nail in the coffin.
So, what's the big lesson we can all take from Marjorie Rodgers' long and expensive legal fight? Well, let's just look at the final outcome.
The final scorecard was, well, a clean sweep for the HOA. Marjorie's petition was dismissed, the HOA's rule was upheld, and that $550 filing fee she paid, the judge said, nope, you're not getting that back. She lost on every single point. This case leaves us with some really powerful takeaways. First, in any contract, every single word matters. The difference between owner and owners decided this whole thing. Second, may allow is a world away from must allow. And finally, remember that these documents are written to create obligations for the organization, not necessarily to give you individual rights. Reading the fine print? Yeah, it's not optional. And all of that brings us to one final lingering thought. This entire story, a legal battle that cost real time, real money, and a lot of stress, all of it came from a misunderstanding of a few words in a rulebook written years and years ago. It just makes you wonder, do you really know what's hiding in yours?